everybody, I am Jessica Henry Gray and I want to welcome you back to my YouTube channel. I know I've been away for a while, but it's been good to have a little bit of a break and I'm happy to be back. Anyway, I am here today in Mansfield, Ohio at Kingwood Park and I'm going to paint this scene here. I've got this beautiful duck pond and this gorgeous, I'll show you over here a little bit, building off in the distance. And I'm going to be visited today by some wildlife. I've got some peacocks and ducks flying around here. It's kind of fun. Anyway, so I am going to do a voiceover while I'm painting this. And I will demonstrate all of that here coming right up. All right, you guys, remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. All right, so the colors I'm using today are titanium white. And I grabbed an Indian yellow just in case I wanted to try it. I have cadmium yellow medium, yellow ochre, burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, phthalo green, and alizarin crimson. Just putting my canvas up, I have a panel that is 8 by 13, and then I'm beginning with a thinned down mixture of just blue, ultramarine blue and sienna, drawing in loosely my composition, taking into account that I did want most of this painting to be about the water. That was what moved me on this scene, and so I'm just focusing on the large masses in the background. I want to keep the background fairly simple so that it is allowed to support the main show, which is of course up front with the water. But I did need a little bit of the background to really showcase the light and the value, that strength of sunlight. So I've included here a black and white picture of that background. I wanted to show you just the simple value pattern that I'm working on getting now. So I have the design blocked in, and then I'm just taking my dark ultramarine blue and burnt sienna and putting in the darkest anchors. When it was about noon, somewhere around 11 o'clock noon during the day, and so my shadows were almost black in the background, and that is a really nice effect you can do when doing a plein air painting that is in the middle of the day when your shadows are blackest because the light is almost directly overhead. So I'm painting those pretty dark, as you saw in the value picture that I shared too. They were also very dark. That gives you a nice sense too of that strength of sunlight, that contrast. So I'm moving now into color, and I start with the sky, the furthest away. And I just mixed just blue and white, and you can see here, you don't get that much of a dome-like effect, but even still, where the trees touched the sky, it was a little bit lighter and also a little warmer. And so I added the smallest little touch of phthalo green and a little bit more white to my blue and white mixture. And that lightened it and made it a little bit more warm. And then I'll take a little bit more of the ultramarine blue mixed in this mixture, and I just paint that right along the top, just so we get that slight feeling of that dome-like effect. I want to keep the color in the sky a little bit more muted than what I actually saw in nature. I saw it as being very bright blue, but when you have a painting that has a lot of intense color, as this scene does, I don't want to also have that in the sky as well. So I kept it a little bit more muted blue, and then I'm painting the clouds with just a soft violet tone, and I used the same color for the roofs of the buildings. I noticed in my scene that they were very, very close to the color that I saw in the shadows of the clouds. A little bit more sienna, a little bit more ochre. Some of the roofs had here's my friend. I have yet to come up with a name, so if you've got a name for my buddy here, he hangs out with me most of this day. And another day, or about a month ago, I came to the park here, and he was there too. So I don't know, he's sweet. So anyway, the roofs, I added a little bit more sienna, a little bit more ochre to that. Sometimes looking at a roof, I saw some cooler tones. It just depended on what was being bounced into the roof from the surrounding areas, whether it was sky, it would have a cooler blue, or if it was another building, it would have sort of a warmer tint hitting the colors. So if it was warmer, I'd have a little bit more sienna, a little bit more ochre into it. Cooler, of course, I'd have a little bit more light blue. So I'm just taking and blocking in all of these different varying shades of the same grays. Some of the buildings were tucked further behind. Some had that brick that was sort of a soft peachy rose color. And then now I'm just taking a dark green and silhouetting the trees behind the buildings. And I liked these back there because it sort of framed the buildings and gave them a sense of place that they were in a park setting. I didn't want a whole lot of detail in these trees with sky holes and things in the trees, so I just kept it very simple, yellow ochre and a little bit of blue. Be sure to clean your brush off often while you're working. It will keep your brush from getting full of paint, and it will keep your paint colors clean and just prevent muddiness. So to get this shade of green, it's just ultramarine blue, a little bit of cadmium yellow, and I threw in a touch of yellow ochre as well. You can see in this shot here some of the shades of green as they blend into the sunlight. So with all of these, as you know, I've laid down the dark anchor shadow under the bush, and then I worked my way upwards toward the sunlight and that springier green. You can see here, just a bright light green. I used a little bit of phthalo green with some cadmium yellow, maybe just a touch of white to get that really strong sunlit effect. Then I just took a clean dry brush and just sort of got rid of the little white dots, and I added some darker accents, giving some form. And then these different shades of green for the bushes, some of them were cooler blue, so I added a little bit more white and blue. Some were a little bit more intense yellow spring green, like the chartreuse, so I added some more of the yellow and white, and again, a teeny dot of the phthalo green. So there were some flowers back there in the distance, and I didn't want to make them very dotty, so like little dots, so I masked them together, all the reds and the different pinks, and just kept it, when I squinted my eyes, I just kept it really simple. Whatever I saw in the scene, just as a simple little mask. Painting the sunlight on the sidewalk, remember cadmium yellow and any cadmium reds, whatever, those colors give you the sense of sunlight. So I love to use cadmiums when I'm painting passages where I know that there's going to be intense light. So I have the cadmium yellow and some white, a little bit of sienna. And then as I came and brought the path up into the shadow, I wanted the shadows to feel soft and not cut out. So I let my brush sort of drag along the edge of the shadow, and just to soften them a little and make it feel like they were part of the sidewalk rather than just a thing unto themselves. And then I just drew a little bit of the edge of the sidewalk as it goes down into the duck pond. That's pretty much all I did for the sidewalk. I added a little bits of green moss and things peeking through. Now, as the edge of this pond curves around and picks up a little bit more light, I just lightened the color of that bank just a little bit there. Again, I didn't want to get too fussy with the different stone carving things that I saw on the edges of the cliffs. I did a little bit on this one because it was closer to us and added just a few accents further back, keeping it a little bit textured. It softened that break from the sunlight into the shadow. Now I'm working on colors that I see in the water, again starting far away. You can see in this picture here, it's almost a dark teal on the edge of the water. So right furthest away, I'm starting with that darker teal, and then as I move again over to the light, I'm lightening that passage of the water a little bit as I go. A little bit more yellow ochre, a little bit of white, some blue, gives it that sense of gradation. Just picking up a little bit more. At this point, I'm just a simple dividing line from the bank to the water, where it's casting a bit of a shadow. Now in this passage here, for a while actually, I'm just taking different shades of green with just the slightest amounts of shifts in blue versus yellow versus ochre and white to block in the colors that I saw being reflected into the water. Remember, everything that's reflected from above is going to be a little bit darker in the water. So I have my greens here, and I'm looking at them. You can see from the pond to reality, they're a little bit darker in the water. So I'm just blocking them in where I see these major colors. I'm not worrying about softening edges in between these color masses. For now, it's important that I get the value in the colors as accurate as possible, which is really primarily the only reason we do plein air, is to capture the light and the color of where it is that you're painting. You can always take your study and a photo and go back to your studio and create a larger, more fully realized painting that has a lot more detail, or however you like to do your paintings. If you like them a little more loose and impressionistic, that's perfectly acceptable as well. It's just a matter of personal preference. There's no right or wrong. Now here, there's this passage in the water. You can see where there's some gray. And I wanted to, when you squint down at this scene here, you can see that gray because it's the buildings being reflected into the water above. And I let some of the green that was existing on my brush mix in a little bit with the gray because it just sort of darkened it. But it was the gray that I had on my palette already for the buildings. But because there was green on my brush, it darkened it a little bit. So I'm painting this in, keeping my brush strokes as horizontal as possible. And then I'm just jumped down to below because I want to connect the bottom with the top somewhere in the middle, just squinting down at the whole scene. I also am sort of chasing light. Sometimes when you're painting a scene and you respond to this particular color passage, the lighting can change so quickly. And so I did want to kind of just reach down and get a little bit of that greenish blue that I so reacted to in the beginning. I think that's what I'm working on here. Now, as I'm painting here, because the water has sort of this layered effect of the color down below and then the shines on top, I do a little bit more blending in this lower area to soften the masses of these colors, because I know in my head I'm going to be painting highlights over the top of this. And so I want the undercoat more blended. And you'll see I get into that a little bit more as we go along. For now, I'm laying down the lightest light in the water. I had the darkest, then the medium, and I need to get that sky in there because that sky is really going to make the pond look wet and glossy. Again, it's a little bit darker than reality, the sky above. Keeping my brush strokes simple and horizontal, and then I'm slightly shifting the shades as I go around. I added just a little bit more green and ochre and white to this mixture that I saw as I got a little bit closer to me, and I knew that there were shines and shimmers floating on top of this dark, almost olive green below. So I worked on some of that, just laying it down, gentle horizontal strokes. And then to make water really look wet, you want to lay down a clean swath of paint like that. It just that clean line will give you that feeling of glossiness. And so I soften the edge on some of them in a little bit here. And I think that that helps to really make water look wet. Now the brush strokes further back in the background, I use smaller, more horizontal strokes, just layered over the top of those green masses to give it the illusion of wind rippling the surface of the water, wind or the fountain, as is the case. You can see them back there, they're choppy little strokes, creating the illusion of rippled water on the surface. And then, of course, as I squint down in the background and I'm looking at it carefully, I can see passages where there's darker green in and around the blue, sky blue ripples. And so I'm laying those down in little pieces of paint. It will give you the overall feeling of sort of an impressionistic painting, but you can also come back through and soften and polish some of those wave ripples. That's up to you. In a plein air study, of course, I am just trying to lay down the color notes and some of the values there. So just adjusting my subtle shifts in blues and greens, that is pretty much all I am doing in the rest of this passage. Also trying to maintain the illusion of what is close to me and what's further away. Everything close to me is going to have sort of a more articulate voice, sharper edges, crisp values, a little more color, vibrancy, and so forth. Everything that gets further back starts to get a little bit more blended, a little bit more the strokes are closer together, and just sort of overall creates an effect that, the show is not up here. Look over front, look around. And so that's what I'm working on here as well, getting in those highlights as the water curves and turns around. While I'm working on this passage back here, I want to take a moment and tell you about some of the things that I've been working on lately. In the last few months that I haven't been here on YouTube, I've been working on my inventory with my art and just some other studies and things that I've been focused on. Excited to share with you some new ideas and things. First of all, I have an art sale going on, and some of the paintings are leaving. This is my once a year, the best sale that I offer on my art. So I'm going to put a link down below here, and take a look at some of these paintings. Some of them are favorites, and I've marked down the prices about 50%. So I'm excited to share these with you. They're not going to be around much longer. The sale goes to September 15th, 2020. All right, and then another thing I'm thinking about, and I'm excited to do this with the situation with the virus and everything around the world. Some of my workshops have been canceled, moved to next year. And so a number of people have requested that I do online Zoom workshops. And so this is something that I am in the process of putting together a schedule for. If this is something that you would like to, get notified of when I am going to be having a Zoom workshop, go ahead and join my mailing list, my newsletter on my website. In the next few weeks, I'm going to be coming up with an email, a newsletter that I send out to my subscribers and let them know that what I have coming up and what I'm going to be teaching and when I'm going to be teaching it. And I'm planning on traveling around too, into the states nearby, in order to get some really beautiful settings for a workshop, even though they would be online. I think it would just be captivating and intriguing. And so if you're interested in that, go ahead and join my newsletter or leave a comment or your email somehow, and I will keep you posted of any and all upcoming news as far as that's all concerned. I do still have a few spots open in the France workshop. We would be in France, or just coming back from France, that we had planned for the workshop. And that's been moved to June of next year, 2021. We have a few spots that are available, that have recently come available. If you'd like to be a part of that workshop, 10 days, June 15th to the 25th. Really excited about that. That is going to be an absolutely fantastic place at Les Vieux Cavant. 10 days of plein air painting. And we do a little bit of portraiture and other things as well. All right, so back to the painting. What you can see here is I've masked in a little bit more of even some darker blue that you can see where the ripples and folds of the water get a little bit of special treatment. And there you can see some of the darker passages that I was striving for in the painting. And then a little bit of darker accent where that bank comes down into the water, that softer dark green, and I just soften with my brush, kind of flicking it over into the water. Now, pretty soon I'm going to be taking a little bit of highlights to add a finishing touch to the painting, and that is really all this painting needs, is just a little bit more accents of the dark green and some highlights. I could probably have taken all day long on this painting. There's so much involved in painting water, and yes, it'd be a lot easier if you just took a picture. But painting it from life gives you a sense of freshness and vibrancy that you just don't get in the studio. Here I'm taking a dry, clean brush and just softening some of these ripples in the water and allowing it to have that sort of glass-like feel. Clean, dry brush, wipe it off regularly. And that's it for those. Then I come back through here with some white accents. And you can easily overdo it with these. A little bit was really all it needed. But even still here, it was really a lot of fun because you could see the whole painting start to really come to life and sparkle as I was working on it. I move the camera back here in just a minute, and you can see how it all sort of holds together with those highlights and that glossy, wet feeling. . I'd love to hear from you and leave a comment, or if you have a question, I try to get at them. And yeah, I'm happy to be back. And so don't forget, if you did enjoy this video, to like and subscribe and check out the links below. And this one will be available on my website, original art called Plein Air Paintings. I hope you enjoy the rest of this video as I just wrap up this painting. And also stay tuned to the end here. I've got a really funny clip. This silly peacock, I headed over to get a bottle of water, and he was in this bathroom area. You got to check this out. It's pretty funny. It made the cut into my YouTube video. So, all right, everybody, enjoy, and I hope that you have a wonderful time. I will see you next time. Okay, bye-bye. You know, you don't have to go in there. Oh, he knows he's a boy. All right, well, that wraps this up. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and remember to like and subscribe if you do enjoy it, and check out the links below that I mentioned during this video. All right, you guys, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.